I can tell you there are no stupid questions, not as far as I'm concerned. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Mark back up onto the stage. We're going to have a Q&A because Mark didn't want to be up there on his own doing a presentation that might take him in a direction he didn't want to end up in. Mind you, also, we need to keep to time. Sorry, I just realised that I was going to make the same mistake I did in the other room if I didn't bring my notes to introduce our next guest. Oh. I know, and we don't want to do that on a live stream, do we, Mark?
No.
Oh, that's right, you didn't know. Here you go. So, facilitating a conversation can often be the best way to share information with a group of people. So, we're going to do a bit of a discussion like we did for the interview on the video, and then after that, I'm going to throw it over to you and you can ask your own questions about Mark's experience. Do remember, Mark is a grower who has been influenced by his community and mostly neighbours who have been doing practices that he wasn't on farm. So I wanted to dig a little deeper and help him tell that story because I think it's really important for us to understand the influence Project Catalyst growers can have on generational farmers. Yeah? Great. Stop looking at me, Jerry. So Mark, in that video you were talking about the fact that you had this basket case farm and it was only producing very low tonnage. Tell me what's happened since, or bring us up to speed, because that was filmed in 2021.
Well, it's gone pretty good. So it was sort of producing that 26 to 29 tonne of the acre, year in, year out. It just wasn't producing. So I just happened to be lucky to be at a field day and I bumped into an agronomist, which sort of changed my life really. He just taught me a few things on what to do and how to do it. So from that tonnage and from starting beans, which you said you were doing on just a few acres and then it was 100, where are we at now and what have the results been like in relation to your productivity or yield? Yeah, so I've got a neighbour, right? So he sort of, he said to me, why don't you try and grow some beans? I said, mate, I'm really not interested. The farm's too large, I haven't got the time, plus we run a few head of cattle. I'm just not going to get around to doing it. So they had built through the Cane Growers magazine it was a CD, a virtual bus tour, and they had seen something in the corner of their eye that they've seen, that it was a bean planter that drills straight into the stool. And so they, like most of us farmers, like cheating, like looking over the fence, and that's exactly what we did. They actually built the planter, and they were going through a bit of R&D, and so I said, yeah, mate. They said, do you want to plant some? I said, go for your life. So they did, I think, 10 or 20 acres for me, and it came out really, really good. So I was impressed. So.
And how much are you planting now?
Anywhere up to 200 acres a year. So we started off the first year. I had to come up with a design myself. I bought an APV air seeder.
That was the one you had at the field day in the video?
Yep. So is this coming through all right? Okay, that's
better now.
And that screen's in the way there, so do you want to swap sides, mate?
Sure, I'll just take my microphone with me over here.
Right, go right.
Hey?
So,
can you see down? No, I can't say that.
So I had an old Conflu applicator and we just, got some ideas and we built this thing. And then it's never really turned back. It's been fantastic.
So how much are you getting out of there now?
Out of what?
What yield? What are the numbers?
Okay,
give us the numbers. Where are we at?
Okay, so my intentions were to get this farm producing 30 tonne to the acre, right? So as an average. So we're talking averages here. So I might be able to get a plant crop at 37, but it would drop down to 30 and then into the 20s. I said, rightio, I want this farm to stay in the 30s. So this is where it all started. So between this agronomist that I met and these beans, we started putting all these beans out and...
Yep. Continue.
So we started putting these beans out and then we actually started producing around the 35s. And I'll tell you it's a beauty story, and everyone knows Ross that cuts my cane, right? So he said to me, he comes around with the harvester and said, rightio, we've got to cut so much cane for this round. So rightio, we're working out all the tonnages, and he said, what do you reckon that paddock's going? I said, look, mate, plant crop will be 37. Mate, after that, I don't know. And so he all day was cutting in these other paddocks. He gets to this paddock, and he rings me up, you lying bastard. That's exactly what he said. I said, what? He said, it's not cutting 37 tonne to the acre. So what's it cutting? 30? 32? What? He goes, I'll tell you what, I'll bring my truck book, my farm book, with my farm, which is 122, and your book, 450. And anything over 37 tonne to the acre, I'm keeping. Right? So I said to him, what do you reckon it is? He said, 37 tonne to the acre. I said, you're full of crap. So this is exactly the conversation we had on the phone. So that afternoon, we finished that block, or the next day, we finished that block, and I said, how did it go? And he goes, I got the tonnages. He said, how did we go? Did I win the carton? I said, nah, it only went 36.5 tonne to the acre. 46 tonne. 46.5 tonne to the acre. So it didn't make the 47, it made the 46. So that's the dramatic change by having a good agronomist on your side and doing, planting beans and doing the other bits and pieces.
Fantastic.
Right.
What varieties are you running on that particular paddock?
You mean cane
Varieties. Yeah.
So it's a first round cut farm. We geographically farm. We've got around about 1,000 acres or 400 hectares. This particular farm is about 100 acres. So first round cut, 100 acres, away we go. So the varieties have got to be pretty early sort of varieties. So they're like Q250. To me, I don't know in other areas what it's like. For me, I love it. So first round cut, everyone's in top Abergaria probably cutting 9s and 10s CCS. I'm cutting 11s and 12s with that variety. It is a sandy farm. Generally not is a big tonnage farm, but as an average, it's sort of cruising around those sort of mid-30s now. So that's where it is. It might grow a decent plant crop, but so that's where it is at the moment after doing what we've done. So mostly 250, bit of 200, and I had a little bit of 186 in there as well.
Excellent. So what difference does varieties make? Thanks, Jasmine. It's my phone, yes, Jerry. Thank you. I'm the one who tells everyone normally to turn theirs off, but I've been having to turn mine on for media. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked, and it's not even Mark, it's me. And I'm up here to keep him under control. Can't control this one, though, Jerry. All right. Would you mind, smashing it or burying it? Sit on it, or maybe just turn it off in a little button on the... Thanks, Jasmine. We can't even cut that. That's a live feed. I know, Jack. So, back to varieties. How do you like to prepare for a new or clean seed? Because I know that's really important that you don't. If you're looking at 5th and 6th returns,
yep.
How important is it to start with a good genetic and clean breed?
Well, it's critical. So, to have clean source of cane is critical. So, when I first came home to the farm, my uncle passed away, he had a few problems, Parkinson's and all sorts of stuff. So I was only winging it. I was only just a steering wheel attendant. I was just driving tractors. He passed away. Couldn't understand him because he was a strong speaking Italian. Trying to pass on knowledge to you was very hard. So I spent my whole time winging it to sort of see where we're going. So they never really had a game plan. The game plan is, what are we doing today? That's it. Not what we're doing in 2 days. Or in 2 years, sorry. 5-year plan, no 10-year plan. All they did was worked. And so we had to change that. So we were planting off material that was first return, second return, third return, had red rot. It had bloody borers in it, had splits in the side of it. Then once you start getting into September, your cane gets all pithy. So you plant stock. When you do plant it out, your first plant crop is already on the back foot. So you're already behind. So started the usual story: go out to the seed plots and get your seed cane. But that started getting too much too, because I'm on my own. You had to race around with a trailer and cut the 1,000 sticks or whatever you had to do. So I was sort of forced into a corner where our prod board sort of said to me, "Why don't you try tissue cultures?" And I said, "Oh, here we go."
Sorry, I could hear country music coming from his pocket.
No, it wasn't me.
But it wasn't game to check, because that would have looked awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right.
you're just as bad as me. We're the perfect pair to be up on stage. Both of our phones going off.
The two Ronnies.
All right, Mark, come on.
So.
I'm not a man.
So where was I up to? Yeah, that's right. So getting clean Scott. So I had my prod board. So I had Lawrence DeBella come to me and say, I was dancing around like a plover, carrying on like a dickhead, trying to say, okay, I need some varieties. I can't get 100 sticks and try and have it ready and try and be able to have large quantities. I've got to be able to plant 150, 160 acres a year. I can't base that off 100 sticks. So he said, "Mate, why don't you try tissue cultures?" So he threw me in the deep end. Said, "Rightio, I'll see you tomorrow." We sat down, we had a game plan. So we got 1,000 plants of 4 varieties. Now, I don't encourage people probably to go out and get tissue cultures as a new variety, but your core varieties. So your core varieties are, for me, is 200, 208, which I'm probably going to give a miss now because the rats and the cockies and the pigs love it. 250 and 240, 253. Right, so they're my core varieties. So I would actually take a push down there if you really want to start going down that avenue. So that's where I started getting my clean seed cane. So, yeah.
So with clean seed cane, what has that meant for your business in relation to changing the way you were farming before?
Oh, it just means that, longer returns. So just to go back to the basket case farm, it's never had tissue cultures on it, but because I was getting fresh seed, I started getting fresh seed. Where we was ploughing out at 3rd return, we are now pushing into 5th and 6th. So in saying that, the 6th returns are getting a little bit tired, but I've decided, I had made a decision, I'm going to try and push it to see where I can go with it. And I know 6th return is probably too far. I'd say that 4th and 5th is where it needs to be at this stage. I mean, if you've got river flat country, I've got river flat country there, then I've got 13th return 200 in it. I mean, you can't compare that type of country. In your tougher countries, you've got to look at things a lot differently. So.
Yes, Mark did say that he is blessed. So we have other people from the wet tropics who believe that Abagauri growers are definitely in a different league. So please don't, start on that track. And he's not going to skite, I promise. It just gets in people's craw, doesn't it? So Mark, so coming back to, where are you going to take this next? Obviously, you've had soil health improvements. You've had, obviously, from your beans. Have you thought about going into any sort of multi-species or looking at nitrogen reduction rates?
Okay, so when I started doing beans, it was all about, it's just my next door neighbour, we'll call him Uncle John. So Uncle John would come over. He said to me, "Do you want to plant some beans?" So it was all about just trying to grow the stuff. So try different varieties, try sunham.
As a break crop.
As a break crop. I wasn't sort of worried about the nitrogen. That's all. I was just trying to concentrate on growing the stuff and see how easy and how we could do it. I mean, there's guys out there that disc all their ground up and they just spread it with a spreader. And
so do you go to harvest or are you just ploughing it?
I just plough it straight in at this stage. I am looking down the track at something that's harvestable, whether it's cattle feed, because we have got cattle, so that's a part that we're looking at. But I haven't sort of thought much farther than that. I'm just sort of winging it as I'm going.
So considering you're winging it, what restricts you going out into other varieties or varieties you may have tried in the past that you're not planting now? Pests?
Sorry. Yeah, I got off track there again. But yeah, one of my problems is with multi-species. Now, we've got the trifecta of pests: cockatoos, pigs, and rats. So...
Did you say crocodiles?
And crocodiles.
They don't eat cane.
So
maybe the pigs.
So I don't multi-species because where I was going to put some moringa and some rungai and put a little bit of sun hemp in with it, what happens is within 90 days you've got a pod that's throwing off these plants, and before you know about it, you've got the cockies. So then you're ploughing it out, so you're wasting your time putting any of the rungai, and you might as well just concentrate on those that 90-day crop. I do strategically place beans or legumes in certain areas to draw pests, and then we sort the problem out after that, if you know what I mean.
Keep them away from the real game.
Yeah. So there's ways.
There are ways.
It's trying to bring an alcoholic out. So it's put a beer out here, you'll bring them out. So.
Did you say bear or beer?
Beer.
A beer?
Beer.
That's got Jerry's attention.
Right.
He can't stop thinking about that coldie that's coming later. You mentioned free beer to Jerry, he's there. I'm sorry, Jerry, I'm just having a go. I love a drink just as much as you do. All right, so does anyone have any questions based on what they've heard from Mark? And give us a couple before we move on to the next presentation.
I've got answers for everything.
Okay, I'll give you a question that was
No
asked
marriage counselling,
in the
but- previous
room was, with his tissue cultures, does he do it from whole stick or billets? There.
Look, at this stage, I've been doing 3 years. This is my 4th year into tissue cultures. I'm finding, I'm not skiting now because they grow well. So they grow really well, and I'm finding that even the stuff that is standing up is bowing, and you can't get in with a plant cutter. And as you can see, I'm built like a gazelle. I'll go and hand cut it, and there's not a chance of that going to happen. So I've decided that I've got a very, very good billet planter operator, and he's very, very clean. So at this stage, we've been going 3 years. I haven't caught any nasties through his billet planting gear. So you've got to be very, very, very sterile, very meticulous at keeping your gear clean, because you can lose it that first year to RSD or whatever else is out there that could come.
That he hasn't had.
Hasn't had
so he
yet.
doesn't know.
So.
Oh, there's no wood other than here. No. Anyway, any questions? Final chance for you to ask Mark anything. It doesn't even have to be related to what he's just told you about.
No marriage counselling, no.
Mark, you said you can answer everything?
Yep.
Where's the best fishing spot?
My place, and you'll never find it.
Okay, but that does pertain to the work we do. With the Project Catalyst work and what you've come to understand from being at this event and several other events with Alan Lynn and Robert Benassi and some of your local growers, how do you think their work and what they're doing influences people like you?
Well, the thing is, look, I'm 70 k's away from Alan Lynn. I'm probably 100 k's from Robert Benassi. And it's not just that easy just to go and slip over and see them. I do go to the field days at Alan Lynn's, and I go to the prod board meetings, things like that. So, like I was saying before, I actually do sit on the fence a lot. But if there's something I like, I'll jump on it. So there's nothing wrong with, I'll probably call it cheating, but you look over the fence and you have a look at that farmer, and you look at that farmer and that farmer, and you say, well, I like what he's doing. I like what he's doing, and I don't like what he's doing. And so
in other words, it doesn't suit your farm.
Yeah, it doesn't suit, and plus you've got to get it through your head too. You say, well, it might be a good idea, but it's not really practical. And some people just don't have the budget to do some of that stuff, you know, so.
Or you live so far from a mill, for instance, it's quite expensive to access like mill products or...
Oh, that's another thing too is, your mill muds and ash, you just can't get it to our place. It's way too far. We're 40 kilometres from town, but another 10, 15 from the mill. So that's on top of that. So that's 50.
So is your cane trucked out or is it railed out?
Railed, yeah.
Yeah, so it comes out empty, goes back full, comes back empty out and mill mud, ash in there maybe?
Well,
no.
Actually that has been mentioned. They should bring mill mud product out with the empty bins.
That's it, I'm a solutions-based girl. Anyway,
an idea.
let's conclude this. Oh, Robert Banassi's finally, he wants to have a shot at you, I can tell. He's got that look on his face.
I've been thinking about this, Mark. In between the time where you're Snapchatting and doing everything else you do all day long, part of your strategy, long-term strategy, have you factored in sterilising machinery like billet planters, stool splitters that come and fertilise for you, harvesting contract? Because at the end of the day, it's no good just starting at the product.
Yep.
You've got to bring it right through. So have you factored all that into your long-term plan if you've got time in your day?
Yeah, no. I've got a pretty good crew. Like with the Valor boys, mate, they are dead set spot on with their gear. And when they come in to do my tissue cultures, they dead set clean it out and sterilise and do what they have to do. My harvester driver or operator, when he comes into the area, I don't say you sterilise it here at the farm. It needs to be sterilised there. Before it gets here, gets blown down, brought here, because I need that sterilisation to be working, if that makes sense, right? So, yes, it is part of my, and like last year I did 23 RSD tests and I didn't get one bad result. So far, never say never, because it can happen. Especially with geographical farming, geographical harvesting and pushing out, the harvesters are doing 1,000 tonne a day instead of 30 tonne a day like the old days. So they're moving really quick. So the guys have got to be, say like your boys, mate, they'll be bloody running around with the Sterimax non-stop, from block to block, So yes, it's critical. So yeah.
Please thank Mark for having the courage to come up here. My reputation precedes me. Thank you very much for joining us. I've got a gift for you too.
True.
Yeah, it's not me. Our next speaker believes to combat climate change, water insecurity and social issues, we need to focus on restoring natural systems, but not alone, together. Please welcome Lynn Hong, Head of Climate and Water with Coca-Cola ASEAN and the South Pacific region.
Thanks, Kim. Hi everyone, my name is Lynn Hong and I'm the Head of Climate and Water for Coca-Cola ASEAN and South Pacific. First, I would like to acknowledge the Kimoy Walabara Yidi people who are the traditional custodian of the land and pay respect to the elders both past and present. So today my topic is about creating sustainable value for nature and society. It's quite a mouthful, but what does that mean? In simple words, it's about impact and it's about return on investment. So through using Project Catalyst as an example, I've been running a trial on my own to understand how can we use new methodology to measure broader impact that projects bring to nature and society. Try this out. Right. But first, let's start with water. For me, water is a precious resource, and we all know that. It comes through rain, flows through river, flows through our house, and our land, and into the ocean. And it's also special because this is one thing that connects us all today on Project Catalyst. And I've been privileged that through my role with Coca-Cola, working on water stewardship, I've been able to be involved with Project Catalyst and look at the impact that it brings, which I'll talk about it in the next few slides. And I've been privileged to be invited to speak and share with you these learnings here. I know I haven't been on Project Catalyst as long as some of our growers here, but personally and professionally, this is a special project. Professionally, Project Catalyst really touches all the elements that we have in business. The supply chain of our ingredient, it's the environment that we are working in, it's the water that we are working on, which is key ingredients for us. It's the agriculture and the connection to the people. And personally as well, Great Barrier Reef has been a special place, has a special place in my heart. It's where I first started scuba diving and where I fell in love with the underwater world. So I'm really proud to be able to be on this project and say that I'm working to help protect the reef. And for Coca-Cola, it's also special. This year, in 2023, it marks the 15-year anniversary of our partnership with Project Catalyst. And Project Catalyst has been an integral part of our Coca-Cola water journey, as you can see here. We started in 2007 with a pioneering goal in Coca-Cola to say that we want to reach 100% replenishment goal. And what does that mean? That means for every drop of water we use to produce our drinks and beverage, we want to give one back. And shortly after, that's where Project Catalyst partnership is launched with the Coca-Cola Foundation in 2008. By 2015, Coca-Cola achieved the 100% replenishment goal 5 years ahead of our time, 5 years ahead of our pledge. And Project Catalyst has been so important to allow us to achieve this goal, to be water neutral, not only in Australia, but to also contribute to the global water neutral goals. And not long after, in 2018, Project Catalyst has a milestones on its own. It celebrated the 10-year anniversary with the Parliament House event. And I think the greatest milestone for me here was that Project Catalyst grew from just 19 farmers, 19 growers in 2009 to more than 130 farmers in 2018, where the 10-year anniversary was celebrated. And we continue as Coca-Cola continue to evolve to our 2030 goals, we have tapped into this 15 years of legacy of learning on sustainable agriculture, on innovation to help shape our future vision. And more importantly, tap into the water and sustainable agriculture framework. And to touch on quickly what our 2030 water goals and vision is to ensure that there are good quality water and good quantity of water for people and nature. And we do this through 3 pillars. We want to increase water security through our operations. We want to do that through our communities, and we want to do that, more importantly, through our watershed. And when we talk about watershed, we're looking at not only where we get our water supply from, but also where all our ingredients are grown. And this is important because when we transited to our 2030 water vision, we did an end-to-end water footprint study to see where do we use water the most when we make Coca-Cola. And what we found was 92% of the water that we use are in growing ingredients itself. And this shows that, it's becoming it's more important than ever now. We work with grower. This will be our key part of our strategy to make sure we continue to improve practices and promote the health of the land and the rivers that we are in. So we started looking back at Project Catalyst, and it's truly ahead of its time and ahead of this water strategy where we are looking at where our ingredients are grown. And we realized that Project Catalyst is more than just water volumes that Coca-Cola has been reporting, and it's more than just water quality that we're reporting. It has bigger opportunity to look at what are the other co-benefits that it truly brings and what are the impacts that it brings to nature and society. And so I started on my little pilot. We engaged with our partners, Dankstedt, to understand how can we measure so that we can replicate it every year, and how can we then understand from these learnings, tap into it, and give a value to these benefits. And so using methodology, we've quantified and qualified some of the co-benefits that you can see on the screen today. So on top of water quality and quantity, we know that there are benefits in farmers' productivity, there are benefits in carbon saving, and we can measure that in monetary value. We also know that there are certain things that we can't monetize today. That includes enhancing the biodiversity and also capability building. And when we look deeper into what the value is, based on the investment that the Coca-Cola Foundation has supported Project Catalyst, this impact for me is quite significant. When we look at water quality, by improving the water quality and removing, more than 180 metric tons of chemical runoff, this benefit equates to $2.9 million per year in ecosystem value. And on top of that, I've touched on, biodiversity as well. It helps the Great Barrier Reef reduce the risk in losing biodiversity. The second thing that we found that is quite significant is productivity. When we look at the farmer saving in the reduced use of fertilizer, that value that it brings is estimated to be around $3.6 million per year. And there is two other benefits here that we can see, one on carbon benefits. So the other environmental benefit that this project brings on top of water will be on climate. So you can see that based on the savings on the reduced use of fertilizer and therefore the denitrification, we save around 600 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. And through this learning, through this study, we found that there is potential to explore more around this space and to measure and get and to expand projects with a focus on carbon. Last but not least, capability building and networking is something that we cannot monetize it, but it's extremely important. As we can see here today, it brings the community and growers together to share learning and network and learn and encourage one another. And so capability building and network is something which is a very strong co-benefit of Project Catalyst. So this is not an eye test, but also another chart to show you how important and how big a return Project Catalyst is. Through this pilot study, we also sampled a few other projects that relates to water programs around Europe and ASEAN, and we put them all on the chart. We see that the benefits, the co-benefits and the benefit that Project Catalyst bring is truly off the chart. It was actually left out of the chart when the report came out, and I have to ask to include this back in it. When you look at the investment and the returns that it brings, the return of investment is 1.2 years, which what we say here, it's the biggest bang for buck on investment. And it has the highest overall benefit, not only because we have been putting big investment behind it, and also the longevity of the program, but also how this project was designed to start off with. It was designed to address all the key issues that we are facing now, nature and in society. And through this pilot, we've actually had a few learnings. One of the top learning was design of the project matters, as I've alluded to. When we look at projects that delivers benefit or that addresses key issues on and the environment, nature, the people, the social aspect, it brings a lot of benefit, especially when we are focusing on an ecosystem that requires significant attention, such as the Great Barrier Reef that is degrading. These projects usually bring a lot of, it brings huge benefit. And on top of that, I think now that we know what this type of design, what type of benefits, what type of co-benefits design of the project brings, we're going to apply and multiply. We're going to use the same learnings to apply in different parts of agriculture industry in Australia, and also share it with our friends overseas and globally as well, as we continue to focus on sustainable agriculture. But for Project Catalyst, we now know where the strength is. We know that tapping into this strength, we can amplify and we can design projects and evolve these projects to amplify some of these strengths that we've learned and maximize the impact that we bring to nature and society. So I want to end the presentation with a big thank you. On behalf of the Coca-Cola Foundation, I want to thank the partners, WWF Australia, Great Barrier Reef Foundation, and all the growers here today. Without your dedication and your commitment and your belief, this wouldn't be possible. 15 years is a long legacy. So thank you for your passion, thank you for being here, and thank you for having me being part of this journey.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Lynn about her presentation? Ooh, I like it. Joe
Well,
Linton.
if you don't mind, just before we take any questions, I would like to point out that what Lynn is talking about is just the Coca-Cola component of what Catalyst has done. It's not including the GBRS stuff. The numbers that she's been talking about, those figures are purely what Coke has funded themselves. They're part of it, okay?
Thanks, Ross.
Yes, in relation to current thinking of Coca-Cola's thinking for future support or development in terms of carbon sequestration. You know, we're a mob of farmers that are out there on a fairly large footprint, and carbon sequestration happens to be a, what do you call it, a consequence of the practice that we carry out. Where is Coca-Cola in that game?
So when we look at our impact on climate change, we know that Coca-Cola has a footprint, and we have committed to reduce our footprint by 25%. So at this stage, we are very focused in reducing our footprint through actions in, being more efficient in our operations, our supply chain, in distribution, and in the packaging that we use. But what we are also focusing on is the future of that. And when you talk about carbon sequestration, we are now exploring how do we tap into the carbon credit framework? How can we tap into natural capital on looking at biodiversity, improving nature, and using those mechanisms to bring benefits and measure those benefits. One of the things that we realized through Project Catalyst was that, we have been limited by our data to be able to quantify carbon. So one of the ideas that we have, and Ross probably can help me out here as well, on the next step on understanding carbon. We're still on the journey, but getting data, working with growers like yourself to get the data to understand that carbon sequestration, how can we amplify, how can we maximize that, will be one of the next thing that I would like to explore.
Anyone else have a question? Lynn, is there an opportunity, you mentioned exploring those options around carbon sequestration, for you to be involved with the existing farmers you have who are already sequestering it to do offsetting?
Sorry, Kim, can you?
I'm just wondering if there's an offset, because there's a lot of corporations now offsetting their carbon through businesses that are sequestering carbon.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if that was a potential avenue, I suppose, you might look at with your own growers that you're already involved with in trials.
I think that's definitely one of the ideas that we want to explore. There's quite a big mechanism behind how you can claim offset credits. We haven't done that today. As I've said, we are exploring how to do that. But we also want to understand what is the maximum that we can achieve through working with our growers. So we're still on that journey. First, my thinking is we'll first understand what data we can measure, what could the potential offset be. And then once we know what that number could be, we can look into how can we apply that to the framework and apply to carbon credits and change that.
I think the carbon economy would be of great interest to farmers who are facing very big challenges in the global markets and other input costs. So we'll have to look further into that. Maybe Ross can help us understand it too. So thank you very much, Lynn. Please thank Lynn. And I do know Lynn is very interested in understanding what you thought about that presentation. So if you want to catch up with Lynn at the break, afternoon tea, which is coming up very shortly, she would love to know the value and what you think about that result. Just from Koch's funding alone, as Ross explained, that's nothing to do with the other funded trials and broader adoption. This is clearly them getting bang for their buck that they've invested in innovation. So the years of money that they've poured in, millions of dollars, Project Catalyst was off the charts. That to me blows my mind, and I think it's something you should definitely take away from here, because all of your efforts have not been for naught. And there is hope in the future, and that's something we're going to hear more about with our next guest, Sam Marwood, who is passionate and excited about farming communities, having experienced one as a child on a dairy farm. He has brought a wealth of experience and knowledge with him, and for years he has been pounding this well-worn path in the ageing on farm prospect and trying to bring resilience to communities and actually make them more vibrant within themselves. So he'd like to empower you today to understand how you might like to picture ageing on farm. Please welcome the co-founder of Cultivate Farms and CEO of Odinata to the stage.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, Ross, and Andrew, and the team for inviting me. This is terrific. So, I'm going to talk to you about ageing on farm, and so you might be a retiring farmer, and this might be relevant to you. I'm also going to talk about next generation farmers as well, who might want to own their farm. So you'll have some relevant stuff if you're a next gen farmer. But if you're neither of those, this still is relevant to you, in that we are putting a call out to regional communities to say that if you want to keep retiring farmers on the land or support next-gen farmers to stay on the land or come back to the land, then the power's in your hands. So I'm going to give you lots of ideas from a retiring farmer, next-gen farmer, and from a community point of view around rejuvenating communities. And that's, I guess, our goal as Cultivate Farms. Our vision is to rejuvenate regional communities. You've heard from Ali and Hayden today around some specific case studies in the Herbert catchment around some matches we've made, but I'm just going to take a step back and say why we even started that project and what we're trying to fight for. But this is at the heart of what we're trying to fight for, is rejuvenating regional communities. And I grew up in central Victoria on a dairy farm, and the amount of people that are there is probably halved since, was that the 90s? But it doesn't have to be that way. And these trends of people saying communities are declining are just trends, doesn't have to be a reality. And our thesis is that if you could show that ownership is possible for the next generation, they will stay and slug it out on farms for years. They will start from scratch and become the best farmers because ownership, for some reason, and this is what I'd love to test with you all, seems to be a burning desire for farmers. I don't know what it is, but I think you can talk to almost anybody and they can recognise that as a fact. So if ownership isn't being realised for next generation, they're off going into Sydney and Melbourne and the skyscrapers just here doing something else. But we're saying if you can show that ownership is possible, you'll keep and attract the very best people to be farmers. The question is, how do you make ownership possible? And we think we've figured it out, and actually it's nothing really new. It's a lot of techniques and processes that have been happening for centuries. We're just trying to make it happen faster. So we think if we can show ownership is possible, we'll rejuvenate regional communities, and that can only be a good thing. So a bit of a workshop style. I expect to be writing notes furiously, but we do have all this on our website and free downloads of everything. But hopefully you'll get something, at least one action to take away, whether, again, you're a retiring farmer, aspiring farmer, or you love farming communities. I want to give you hope for retiring farmers that if you don't have family to hand the farm onto, you can stay on your farm, and that's, I guess, the cornerstone of what we're thinking about here. Hope if you're a next-gen farmer that you can own your farm, and hope if you're a community member that, yeah, you can help be part of rejuvenating your community if that's what you want. Give you a stack of options, and then hopefully at least one action that you can take away this week. So when Tim and Tegan, who are the co-founders that you saw a photo of before, when we thought of this idea of Cultivate Farms, a business to help make ownership possible for the next generation, we had no idea what that meant. We thought that sounds really, really cool. So we Googled, we talked to everybody, spoke to people overseas, and we realised we've got a model here that nobody else really is focusing on in Australia, and if not internationally, someone's going to steal it somewhere one day, but realised that it's not about setting up an investment fund, it's not about us having $1 billion, it is about us matching people. There are retiring farmers who don't want to hand their farm on to their kids, or who don't have kids to hand it on to, and there's next gen who want to own a farm, and our job is to match those people together. And it is about getting married almost, that it's about finding the people who you get along with and share your values. It's not just about handing your farmer over to anybody, any bozo that walks up. It is about finding someone who's worthy, has worked hard, you've built a relationship, and you're happy to find some way to share ownership, whether that's the business, the land, a combination. There's so many ways that it can look like, but our first step we've realised is making people aware that it's possible, and then connecting them up, and then hoping that they can find an arrangement that works for them both. So what do? We do hope, farm ready, and matching. Hope is the big one, and I talk about love and hope and dreams a lot, but most of what we're doing is getting people's mindset to change, to say you can own a farm, so stick at it. So we do this hope thing. We then encourage people to be farm ready. If you're not a good enough farmer, why would anybody want to match with you? So we encourage next gen to go and learn, work on a farm, be the best farmer, so that you can get to that third step, which is one day have somebody to talk to around me matched onto their farm. This is a picture of me and my little brother on our farm in Dingy. We've got our Nissan Irvan in the back there. I was one of 6. So I was never getting the farm anyway. But I still remember asking Mum and Dad for the farm, and they said, nah, we're selling when you're a bit older, and that's what they did. But I remember at age 8, I think it was about that age, that I thought, well, I'm not going to be a farmer. If I'm not going to own the farm, why would I be a farmer? And I don't know why that was the case, but that's just how I thought. So I went off and worked for government for many years, and until I had that conversation with Tim Hicks around this idea of helping next generation to own their farm. So yeah, the farm got sold in '99. So how do we encourage the discussion from a retiring farmer and a next-gen farmer? In the next few slides, I'll focus on retiring, and the last slides I'll focus on next-gen. With the support of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation and our project that Ellie and Hayden talked about, we developed the Ageing on Farm Guide, which we think is a world first. We haven't seen something like it before, and the National Centre for Farmer Health thought it was fantastic as well and are supporting it. But it's a guide to help farmers just think bigger around their options for ageing on farm. I've got a case study I'll talk through about somebody who did just that. But the message is you don't have to sell your farm and walk away if you don't want to. Of course, if that is what you want, do it, fantastic. But there are so many people out there who love the idea of staying part of their farm. They're just not physically able to run it the way they always have. So our message is you don't have to sell the farm and walk away. I still remember a phone call I had from a lady who said, I just found out about you and our farm got sold last week. And she was in tears and saying, I just wish I knew that I didn't have to sell my farm. I would have stayed on it. And it's those people we want to get to say it's possible to stay on your farm. And there are next generation farmers, if you do like the idea of sharing, who would give their left arm to have an opportunity to think about that with you. And the core of this, it comes back to that vision on that second slide I showed before, is that we think sharing ownership can be that cornerstone concept to rejuvenate communities. Even if 1 or 2%, 1 or 2 people in a community thought about sharing, that would create that drive for next generation farmers to go, yeah, I'm going to stick at this. I reckon I've got a good chance. If I'm good enough, and people hear these case studies of matches, I'm in with a shot of owning my farm, and they'll stick at it, and you'll see communities coming back and more people coming back. We think there are a stack of benefits. These are just some. Again, you can get all this from our guide, which you can download for free. But you can bring a new farming family into the community or keep one in the community. You can remain living on the farm and in the community, or be freed up to be part of the community more, and ensure your knowledge is transferred to the next generation. The cornerstone here is, would you think there is someone worthy to have your farm? And a lot of people probably think just, well, within my 20, 30k radius, I know 3 farmers, and yeah, maybe they're all right. I reckon they'll be all right, but maybe probably not good enough. We're saying we've got thousands of next-gen farmers. We've got a couple of thousand farmers on our database all over Australia who want to own their farm. And you can see videos of these farmers pitching, and you'll get tingles to see how awesome these next-gen farmers are. We're saying if you've got this eagerness or willingness to think about sharing, if you simply put the vibes out there or went out searching, you will uncover some amazing people, and you'll start to realise, yeah, maybe there are next-gen farmers worthy of my property. And that's what we're here to do, is help you think that, to get through that mindset barrier, that there are other people's kids out there that you can partner with if you happen to not want to partner with or can't partner with your own. We used to think what we're doing requires a lot of technical knowledge, and we realised, no, there are lawyers and accountants out there who are happy to work with you and take your money to work through that. So what we've realised, what you mean by sharing could be leasing, share farming, lease to buy, vendor finance, etc. That is the stuff you need to know a little bit about, but we have realised the first thing is to just, again, be comfortable with the idea of sharing and finding that farmer. So that's what we focus on. We're not lawyers or accountants. You don't want me helping with your agronomy. But we're here to help you think through who you would like to be matched with. And once you've found that person, you'll hear their story, you'll know their needs, you'll have your needs, and then you'll be able to tailor a technical solution that meets both your needs. But we tell next-gen farmers and retiring farmers, don't stress about this. It'll come. You do need paperwork, you need your exits mapped out, all that sort of stuff, but just don't stress at the moment. Think about what you want for yourself and for your farm and for your family. Here's Judy and Charlie Hocking on the left there, and they're if anyone got the Sunday Age yesterday in Melbourne, we're on the front page, which is pretty awesome. First time to be on the front page of anything, and that's their story, and there's a couple of photos throughout the newspaper talking about their match with Jeremy and his wife. And the Age actually rang us up and said, hey, can we do an interview? And I got on to Judy, and this is what I love about this story, and this is what we want as Cultivate Farm. She said, no, I can't. I'm on a cruise in New Zealand. I just can't do the interview. So it was a week later, she had to do it. But that's what I wanted to hear. That was annoying, but it was fantastic that she was doing what she wants to do, knowing that she's got a next-gen farmer coming in. So she rang me up. Judy's my grade 4 teacher at East Loddon College on a sheep paddock in central Victoria. And she rang me up one day and said, what do you do again, Sam? Because my kids, I'm not giving it to our kids, and the worker just left. And we said, look, we can help you find someone, and we found Jeremy with, it's a $10, $20 million farm that's transitioning ownership, which is just awesome for both parties. So the guide, which I'm not going to go through details, but here's what it has practical steps. There's about 4 or 5 pages, which are really useful. But the big one is to encourage you around this vision to be selfish. And we find that farmers are not very selfish, but we're encouraging you to be selfish. What do you and your partner want out of your life? What do you want for your farm? What do you want for your community? How do we get you to step back and think a bit bigger, independent of your farm? And I think that's the only way that you're able to step back and go, well, yeah, I do want to do other things, be part of the sporting community, go on a cruise around New Zealand, whatever it is. But if you can pull yourself away from your farm, you can think a bit bigger, and then you can start thinking about, well, my kids don't want it, or maybe they do want it, and that's fantastic if they do. Or, yeah, I'm open to this idea. I've got a bigger vision. I don't really want to lead the farm. Yep, I'm open to this idea of sharing. And then all these other things can fall through around your family. Timelines, income considerations, tax, etc. can all come later, but the very first thing is, do you actually want to do it? What else have you got in your life, your purpose of life type questions, and letting you know that you can realise all of that, and sharing ownership could be an awesome solution for you. So the guide is free to download, and again, we developed it because of the great support from Great Barrier Reef Foundation under the innovation package, which is awesome. It really is a bit of a different project we did with HCPSL, but great outcomes not only for the region but for all of Australia. Last slide on retiring farmers, but there are considerations, and we're realists. We know that things don't work and matches of ours haven't worked as well, but these things need to be understood from the start. So we always say get everything documented, map out your exits, just be blatant about how you're going to exit this thing if it doesn't work. Make sure you talk to your accountants. They're the ones who are going to knock this probably the first. They'll probably say, just sell, it's easier. But make sure you talk to your advisors and you've got people around you to work through this. Make sure you're clear about what makes you nervous. We don't care what makes you nervous. You just be clear on what makes you nervous and make sure the deal eases those nerves. Make sure there's a cooling off period. This is not about giving the farm over for free to someone who doesn't deserve it. It's about saying, hey, you could have a pathway to ownership in year 2. But for the next 2 years, you're going to work on the farm and under this agreement. And if you hit these triggers, then you get your pathway to ownership. So it's just been about having this as a level-headed process. Again, not about you giving away your farm for free. But this bottom point here, if you can offer a pathway to ownership, you can attract the very best person or couple, whoever it is, to come be on your farm, because that is the number one driver for next-gen farmers is ownership. And you as a retiring farmer have that ability to offer it, which means you've got a great carrot. Now, next-gen farmers, and a lot of what I do with next-gen farmers is kick them up the bum and say, come on, the ball is in your court. We get a lot of farmers say, I can't own my farm, it's not possible. And we're saying, it is absolutely possible. The issue is you need to get out there and tell people how good you are, and also you need to be good enough. So we spend a lot of time saying, you can own a farm, it's possible. You're not going to be able to buy it outright up front by yourself, but by sharing and finding a next-gen farmer, a retiring farmer, you'll be able to own your farm. And the cornerstone of that is you've got to find one person who loves you. I do talk about love a lot. And wants to back you. And that takes time. That's about genuine relationships. That's about putting yourself out there. And there's a bit of luck, which is why we're always pushing to try and get more retiring farmers to think about this and more next-gen farmers, because if there's more doing it, there's more chance of these matches going to happen. One big thing we've found with next-gen farmers is a mindset. There's so many farmers who are good farmers, and they've got this little dream, a massive dream, but they've sort of pushed it to the side because they're worried someone will bag them out at the pub. And we're saying, get your mindset right. If you want this, get rid of 5 friends that put you down all the time. Get rid of them. Don't go to so many family events if your family are putting you down. How much do you want this? You've got to have people around you, and you've got to have the right mindset to go from this, because it's going to take 10, 15, 20 years for this to unfold. Could happen tomorrow as well. But without the right mindset, you're not going to be able to find those opportunities. So we do spend a lot of time getting through excuses, really, with next-gen farmers around how they can hustle to own their farm. We tell them, what is your farm vision, just like retiring farmers, but this time a next-gen farmer, what do you really, really want? What could you make money on? What can you farm well? Not what you can afford right now. That's not what we're talking about. This is what do you want? What are you aiming for? And use that to drive you and get you up every day working on a farm and slogging it out. Then it's all around tactics. Now, I've got another 3 slides I could show about tactics, but we give lots of ideas to next-gen farmers about how they can get in front of and build relationships with the retiring farmers. And this is why I'm keen for retiring farmers to see this as well, for them to know that they are the target or the outcome for these next-gen farmers is to build relationships with retiring farmers, and to know that's an awesome carrot that you've got. But we're saying to the next-gen, you've got to try and find out and reach them. You've got to somehow get to know them. You should have a little black book of all the names of people in your community. You should know the real estate market better than real estate agents. People say to me, oh, I just found out someone's selling their farm. Oh, I should have been onto it. I say, you failed. You should have known 5 years ago that they were thinking about selling their farm, and you should have been building a relationship genuinely and been out there and putting yourself out there so that one day one of these farmers might back you. Social media, letter in the letterbox. We've got a draft email, letter, handwritten letter that you can put in letterboxes to start a conversation with the retiring farmers. Get a job that gets you in front of retiring farmers. There's so many tactics, and that's why it's all in front of these next-gen farmers. They're just got to go for it, and if they want it, they'll make it happen. So hopefully if you're a next-gen farmer, you're writing letters and going to get out there now. If you're a retiring farmer, you're at least considering this idea of sharing or telling others around you. Please download the guide. And hopefully those case studies you'll see that there are matches that are absolutely possible. We've done many across Australia already, but hopefully it's a bit of a boost for you and your community that this is possible. You can get the next gen to stay and to come back to your communities. Ownership's the cornerstone. You can do it yourself. You don't need us, but we're here to help if that's useful. And we really don't want to go anywhere. I want to keep coming back up here. My brother lives in Mackay cycles, so I've got an excuse to get back up anyway, but I love the area and keen to see more matches happening. So thank you very much.
Oh, we are back on. I'm standing here talking to myself. Sam, that was fantastic. Does anyone have a question? We can take one or two. No? Great presentation. If you'd like to know more, of course, about anything Sam does, you can speak with him in the afternoon tea break, which is happening momentarily. I just wanted to remind you we're back in this room after afternoon tea. Thank you, Sam. Sam's also going to be attending the dinner tonight, so you can have a chat with him there. And he will be on the farm tour tomorrow? No? No. What a shame. We could have got bums on seats next to Sam and you could have given another talk there. So what I need from you in the next session is to make sure you tidy up what you've got in front of you, take what you're taking with you at the end of the next session. So come back in here a couple of minutes before we're ready to start. You've now got 30 minutes for afternoon tea.